Ozzy boy. A clear is defined by the Church of Scientology as a person who no longer has a reactive mind and is therefore free from the reactive mind's negative effects. A clear is said to be at cause over, in control of, their mental energy, their thoughts, and able to think clearly even when faced with the very situation that in earlier times caused them difficulty. So my question is, how can you go clear in OT and still be a pedophile? How can you go clear in OT and still be a grumpy, angry person? How can you go clear in OT and still be a suppressive person? How can you go clear in OT and still be an asshole to others? How can you go clear in OT and still be a thief, con artist? No clear has yet shown what Hubbard claimed a clear should be. The promises have not been met. That is why Scientology gets a bad name. They promise so high and yet cannot provide said promise. That is why the critics can pull Scientology apart so easily. If going up the bridge makes you a better you, then it would be impossible to be clear or OT and still be a fucked up person. You cannot be what you were in the past. You can only be better, more able, and capable. But just look at the church. A short fucking SP who is OT5 and nobody noticed his evil intentions? No e-meter showed his S-penis. No auditor saw him coming. Nobody, not even Ron, who had him as a messenger. Something doesn't add up. Something is missing in the whole story of the Scientology bridge. How is this church still surviving with such obvious failures? I've asked this question many, many times and cannot get an answer as to how it is possible, with all the tech in Scientology, that an SP can be right under their noses and nobody notices. Can you give us your view on this? Yeah, let's talk turkey here, because this is a really good question and it deserves a really solid answer. L. Ron Hubbard, and I know the couple people who just continue to troll my channel about how wrong I get Scientology. Well, let's talk about Scientology itself and not the Church of Scientology. If the technology of Scientology actually worked and the e-meter actually worked, then you would be able to detect these things with all the questions and all the things that get done within the world of Scientology. You would not be able to make it all the way to clear and OT if you were a suppressive person. And having made it to being clear and OT, you should be a radically different, significantly better, and more able person. And it's simply not the case 100% of the time. We don't have to just point to the exceptions like Rex Tiller, I think it was Rex Fowler who committed suicide, who was an OT8, or the numerous numbers of OTs who have gotten cancer and died. In other words, there's no shortage of case examples or studies that we can do to show that people can do Scientology and not be better people, and in fact even be worse people. And this exists even within the existing world of Scientology. I mean, look at Grant Cardone. The guy's a total asshat. And if that's an example of what a OT Scientologist is, keep me away from it, because that guy is just obviously not somebody you would want to emulate or follow in the footsteps of. All these contradictions exist because the technology doesn't do what it promises it will do. And you're absolutely right. That's what enables people like me to take it apart. And as I've said, I'm going to do a whole series taking apart all the little individual bits and pieces to show pros and cons of all the various parts and the fundamentals of it. But really what it comes down to is that Scientology is a faith-based belief system that requires, as I said in my last answer, it requires a constant ego-boosting pump to keep you going and believing that you're getting better, when in fact, you're really not changing that much about yourself or about your life. Now, there are people who have gotten off drugs. There are people who have made changes, who have been engaged in unethical activity, get their shit together, and now they're no longer engaged in unethical activity, and they credit Scientology for that. There are just as many people, actually thousands more, who credit the same thing to AA, to other drug rehab programs, to other social programs they've become a part of, to social clubs and activities they've become part of, to reading other books. I mean, Joel Osteen and his advice, right? I found God. There are so many sources of people bootstrapping themselves into a better life, right? That you can look at all those, you can look at all of humanity and all the various changes and things that people do to make their lives better, and the things they attribute it to, and you can go, I think there's something to be said here about people's ability to simply get their shit together and lead a better life and make decisions that change things for the better, right? And if they want to credit Scientology with that, or if they want to credit AA with that, or they want to credit the Boys Club with that, fine. Okay, great. I'm not going to sit here and say that influence wasn't a positive influence, but to make an absolute claim about clear and OT is a whole different thing than having a few examples of people who have had some success and attribute it to a source like Scientology. When you have the sheer number of bad examples of it not working, you can't just brush all that off and say, well, those people were, going to victim blaming, or go into, well, it was always their fault. Scientology's flawless and always works, except when it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's because it's their fault, right? That's not logical, man. That doesn't work. There are scientific, provable, evidence-based things that don't have exceptions. They work because they work. And Scientology isn't one of those things. It just isn't, right? There's far, far, far too many exceptions to those rules. And so that's how people can be an SP. That's how somebody like David Miscavige can come into power, and this group of people just like bow down and adore and worship the guy for no good reason. Because when you examine his products, the things he's actually done, where he's taken Scientology, if you take out the square footage as a metric of his success, he hasn't done anything positive for Scientology at all. And this is, that's my opinion, but it certainly is a well-founded opinion. So, that's basically the bottom line. There are various things that Hubbard talked about, like there's a concept of a cleared cannibal, and I might as well bring this up just to kind of Hubbard talked about the fact that you could be a cannibal, and then somebody could come along and clear you so you no longer have a reactive mind, but you'd still be a cannibal. You'd still be eating people. And Hubbard talked about the fact that you need education in Scientology as well as the auditing in order to become a really good, responsible, wonderful person. But again, that doesn't really pan out when you look at the fact that David Miscavige is trained, lots of executives in Scientology got auditor training and education in Scientology, and they weren't necessarily better people for it. They were still doing up to all kinds of shenanigans. So, and again, people who have left Scientology or gotten to the highest levels of Scientology, not just on the auditing side, but on the training side, had just as much cancer, just as much bankruptcy, just as much child abuse, all the litany of things that were still wrong with them. So, so that's really the bottom line, is there is no excuse or rationale or justification for it. The bottom line is Scientology doesn't work. And that's really the simplicity of it.